Gold's always been around and always is. And where we are right now and why I joined the company, it's about location. Same as property, you want to buy a house on the lake. Location, location, location. Our lake is the Cortez mines right in front of us.
The Financial Survival Network. Now more than ever. The Financial Survival Network.
Welcome all. I'm Kerry Lutz, and this is the Financial Survival Network. Thanks for watching and listening. I'm excited to introduce to you a new company, American Eagle Gold, a newly publicly traded company that's focused on exploring for a world-class gold deposit on its flagship property, Golden Trend. It's right by the Gold Rush mine in Nevada. And with us is CEO Anthony Moreau and VP of Exploration Mark Bradley. Gentlemen, welcome. Tony, it's got to be pretty exciting for you getting involved with a company that's got some very impressive neighbors, and you're working on all the geophysics just completed. How are things going there?
Things are going very well, and thank you very much for having me on the show. You're correct. It is very exciting. Worked at a major mining company for a long time. Loved my job, but I couldn't pass up this opportunity. I love mining. I love gold. It's been around for 5,000 years. It's going to be around for another 5,000. People talk about Bitcoin. Gold's always been around and always is. And where we are right now and why I joined the company, it's about location. Same as property. You want to buy a house on the lake. Location, location, location. Our lake is the Cortez mines right in front of us. We are attached to Nevada Gold Mines, a joint venture owned by Newmont and Barrick, one of the richest properties in the world. And there you have a string of 3 world-class mines, all over 10 million ounces. They produced over 25 million ounces in the last 25 years. You got Cortez Hills, check. You got Gold Rush, which is just 5 kilometers away from us, check. You got Pipeline about 10 kilometers north. So that excites me. It excites me that it's blue sky. It's a big opportunity. But what also excites me is the people. You can have a great car, you can have a Lamborghini, but if you don't have a driver's license, it's not going to do you any good. It's the same thing about having a prospective property like we have, potential to have multi-million ounce resource. We need the proper person to be looking for that resource. And I have Mark Bradley, and Mark's here. I want him to join the call. He can talk about the rocks. He can talk about the potential. But Mark didn't just work for the team that discovered Gold Rush next door. He led the team. So you combine that with our property and the people, I think we're set up for a lot of success.
And you kind of answered the question I was going to ask Mark, but Mark, you're a renowned expert in Carlin type deposits. So for you to get involved with American Eagle, what was it that drew you to the company?
Well, I think this area that we're working on, Golden Trend, actually, it's been known for quite a while, but it's never really been systematically attacked in a multi-phased exploration approach. Companies have been in and out. They've done a little bit of this, a little bit of that. There have been 3 or 4 holes drilled that went deeper than 300 or 400 meters. But really, it's one of the only properties left in that area, the Cortez Window, which is the prime host area for the big Carlin-type systems in the Cortez district. It's virtually the only property left that has not been systematically explored. And so there's definitely some real interesting, really attractive blue sky potential there that is ready to be addressed. And
you've got 7,500 plus acres that you got to contend with here, kind of like looking for a dime that you dropped in the middle of Times Square in New York. You got to zero in on it. So obviously the geophysics is important for that. Yeah, it's very challenging. And really, this is the history of the Cortez district. All of the big deposits in the Cortez district were covered. They weren't sticking out of the ground, easy to find. They were all under pediment or gravel cover, or they were under volcanics. They were under barren rocks, so what we call the upper play of the Roberts Mountain Thrust, siliciclastic rocks, chert, siltstones. So
they were all challenging to find. These weren't obvious targets. They had to be approached in a systematic way. And Golden Trend, or what we now call Golden Gate, is no different in that respect. You can't just go out and drill a couple holes and expect to hit a bonanza. It requires a systematic approach, and it requires perseverance. These aren't the kind of properties where you're likely to hit a big discovery hole in the very first round of drilling, especially when you're having to spend a lot of money on deep holes. So the idea is to kind of build up your exploration story, use your geophysics, use your geochemistry at surface, your mapping at surface, and whatever data you might have from historic drilling, and really start putting the picture together, trying to zero in on the most likely areas where you might find a big Carlin type system based on lithology and structure.
And on that note, Tony, you're in the midst of this, your first company, running your first company. Are there any challenges you've faced so far that you weren't expecting that kind of took you for a surprise there?
Not a lot of challenges. The gold price going down, obviously, it puts a little bit of selling pressure on the company. But, you have to hold investors' hands. You got to tell them why you're doing it and what your plan is, and sit down with everyone. And I wouldn't say that's a challenge. It's actually fun. But you made that analogy about finding a dime in the middle of Times Square. Now, what Mark's talking about in terms of the MT, the field exploration work, it's hard to find a dime in Times Square, but it's a lot easier if there's no people around. And doing this proper field exploration work is the equivalent of having no people around in terms of doing the proper work. And we understand it's a risky being involved in the junior mining space. And I say this over and over again. It is like finding a needle in the haystack. But what we're doing is the proper smart work. It's tortoise in the hare. It's about making the probability of success a lot higher. I can go drill tomorrow, probably get the stock up. People will be expecting big results, but people don't know that it's very hard to hit drill intercepts. What we want to do is do the proper front end work. It's very expensive to drill. We want to make sure that we know the land. And what we're doing is MT surveys, seismic surveys. In the layman's terms for that, we're taking an X-ray of the ground. We want to properly understand it. Because when you put that in expensive investment dollars into the ground, you want to increase your chances of probability. And coming back to the needle in the haystack, it is a needle in the haystack. My job is to make that haystack as small as possible. So look after the budget, look after the investment dollars, and make sure we have the best and brightest person in charge of exploration. And that man's right here is Mark Bradley.
Yeah, well, you basically wrote the book on Carlin type deposits here, Mark. Compared to the other mines that you worked on over there, how's the geology look? How are the rocks? Are they comparable?
Yeah, it's certainly what you see at surface, the upper plate siliciclastic rocks, the cover rocks, they're identical to what we see elsewhere in the Cortez window. One feature can't really compare the lower plate in the western part of the property yet because no holes have actually gotten into the lower plate. But we do have some drilling on the eastern part of the Golden Gate property, and that has penetrated lower plate rocks, and they look essentially identical to what we see further north. So there's no reason to expect that the section is going to be significantly different than what we see elsewhere.
My understanding of those hills there, those mountains, they're hills now. They were once mountains, a lot of them that have had a lot of mining done, but they're all kind of very similar. And most of them in that immediate area have got mineralization and they've got metal.
Yeah, it's, of course, every Carlin deposit has certain unique characteristics to make it stand out from the others, but there are certain characteristics that are all the same. In every deposit, we see low angle structures. Folding in the rock is very critical in forming structural traps. They're places where mineralization can pond and form, and also being in the right kind of rock. You need to be in the carbonate rocks of the lower plate, and preferably what is locally called the Wemban Formation there. It seems to be a very prominent host. And so being in those rocks with the right structure, that's a pretty key characteristic for all the deposits, at least in the southern Cortez window.
Now, Kerry, what's really interesting about this whole area, I mentioned before, we've been mining gold for 5,000 years. This whole area where we are, it's the size of Delaware. They produce more gold in this small area of land where they have all these world-class deposits they've been only mining gold there for 60 years. And the Cortez trend, which people say could be as prolific as the Carlin trend, they've only been mining gold there for 25 years on a large scale. And so it's just a very small amount of time that people really do understand Carlin type deposits. All these Carlin type deposits, most of them, all of them actually, started as open pit. Any underground Carlin type deposits you have, they're extension of the open pit. People weren't looking for underground for multiple reasons. It's expensive to drill. There was a lot of low hanging fruit. You got some erosion windows where there are oxides, so people weren't looking for the underground. Mark here led the team. Gold Rush is the very first pure underground Carlin type discovery. And now that most of those oxides have been mined or at least discovered, people are looking for these underground, undercover deposits. I believe that's the future for this whole area, especially for the Cortez trend. And right now we are right next to Nevada Gold Mines Cortez property. So I think we're in a strategic location to be. The closer you are to their mine, the closer you are to the processing facilities, and the easier it is to be taken out eventually. In the end, we want to create a liquidity event. We want to increase shareholder value.
Like we all know, the majors are in a race for reserves now. That in the current market, that's probably going to heat up. And that brings us to the next thing, Tony. What's the plan moving ahead? I know there's some drilling in the future, but where are we heading?
So we finished our field exploration work. We're getting the final results for seismic study shortly. We'll be analyzing all those. When I say we, I mean Mark and his team. They'll be determining where they want to have their drill targets, and then it's the permitting process. Permitting process takes 30 to 45 days. It's expedited because we don't cover a whole lot of land. I believe it's under 5 acres, which we are going to do. And then it's finding a drill contractor, and the plans to start drilling September, October. It'll take about a 3-month program, and then we're going to have the results. We want to analyze the results, look at the data, repeat, triangulate ourselves into high success areas where we're going to target, where we're going to hit drill, we're going to hit mineralization. And the plan is to find an ore body, find a giant resource, and position ourselves for a liquidity event.
Yeah, well, your proximity, you have good neighbors. You know, they always say good fences make good neighbors, but certainly when you have the company that you have there and you're right adjoining them, you have a natural alliance of interests there. And they don't want competition either. And they've already made the CapEx for what they have there. So kind of a natural flow of events, isn't it?
Yeah, one question I always get asked, which I want to talk about right now, and I had a couple investor meetings today, and they ask, if this was such a great property, why didn't Newmont buy it? Which is a great question. But I worked at a big mining company for a long time. And these mining companies, they would rather buy a $500 million deposit that they know the deposit is there, as opposed to spending the money when it's worth next to nothing. Where we are right now, I want to reiterate, it is the best area in the world to be looking for gold. And everywhere that Barrick and Newmont drill on the Cortez trend right next to us, it comes up with gold. So they only have a finite amount of resources and people and money. Even Barrick has an exploration budget. So it makes more sense for them to do brownfield exploration, increase the resource of the deposits they currently have, which creates a big business opportunity for companies like American Eagle Gold. We are feeder companies. Our job out there is torque. We're going to turn this $10 million company hopefully into a $1 billion company and find that resource, because Barrick would rather buy us if we're $1 billion than if we're 10 million. So we're going to put the proper elbow grease in there. We're going to do the work, and we're going to find this discovery.
Yeah, and effectively what they've done is subcontract out their exploration, because, Mark, you've worked for the majors here, and efficiency-wise, I guarantee you, the types of offices you guys are working in compared to what Barrick would have and the overhead and everything else, everything costs more in a big company, right?
Oh yeah, and I think Tony hits the nail on the head. For the majors, they're always concerned about mitigating risk, and everybody knows early stage greenfield exploration is high risk. There's a real high failure rate. So rather than throwing money at that, they would prefer to basically lower their risk, and we'll stick around what we know. And we'll keep expanding on the things we know about, and we'll let the other guys, we'll take like the juniors, go out there and really, pioneer stuff, get out there on the cutting edge and take the risk.
Let them get the risk of the arrows. And because The majors are just production companies, basically. They take what's there and they are really good and efficient at producing it, not so good at finding it. What really intrigues me is the fact that there's so little prior activity, Mark, on the property. It just got overlooked, it appears.
Yeah, to a certain fair extent, that's probably true. I mean, there was activity. I think there was a flurry of activity when Cortez Hills was discovered, and that discovery was announced. So we had a company or two come in, but the approaches were always rather scattershot. You know, they may run a gravity survey or mag survey, and then pop a couple of holes. And if they didn't hit anything, or they didn't hit lower plate where they thought they were going to hit it, they just blocked. There was no real perseverance there, you know, and a lot of the companies probably were underfunded. They were taking a shot, and if it didn't work the first time, they left. And so it's very typical in a lot of the junior sector. It's tough to find a company that will persevere on a property, and this is the kind of property you need to persevere on. It's not something that's going to be boom overnight success. You need to stick with the property, develop it, and be willing to stick there 2 or even 3 years before you get into a really hot hit. But as long as the story's coming together, it's worth hanging around.
People were looking for low-hanging fruit, and I have another fishing analogy. I love to fish, so. A lot of people out there boating, and what they were doing essentially on our property, they're putting their net in the water, and they're boating along, putting their net in the water. They're not catching any fish, so they weren't looking anymore. But unbeknownst to them, there's marlins underneath there. You got to do a little bit deep sea fishing, but there's marlins underneath. Now, there's not marlins on our property. We believe there's a gold deposit there. We got to drill a little bit deeper to find it, but we believe it's there. We're going to put the proper work in.
And a good thing, that's a good point. Previously, people were scared of deep targets, because they are challenging. It's not something obvious that you can get in there and pop a hole and sell stock right off the bat. But now we've got so many examples of deep deposits. Gold Rush is pretty deep. 4 Mile, the new extension of Gold Rush, which has been drilled by Barrick, that's really deep. We're talking 2,500, 3,000 foot depths, but they're hitting the kind of grades where, it's worth going after. So, the fact that it's deep shouldn't scare people anymore. It just makes it's more challenging to find, but the payoff could be big. So,
yeah, and that's what it's all about. Huge payoffs, Tony. Got to be really exciting. Potential of the huge payoff of the mother lode, and that's why I invested in the company, the team, the people, and the project. It was just irresistible to me, and we're going to be following up with you regularly to see what progress is made. Probably after you start drilling, we'll give you a call and we'll get together again. Until then, if you want further information, just go over to the company's website, AmericanEagleGold.ca, and the ticker symbol on the TSXV is AE. Very simple, easy symbol to remember. And it's on my list of reminders. I check it out regularly. You should too. Gentlemen, thanks so much for coming on. Mark, Tony, good luck.
Thank you.
The Financial Survival Network.